The terrifying truth behind casino lights, dark secrets no one talks about. Topic 1, Casino Employees of Reddit. What is the worst you have ever seen someone handle a loss? Story 1. Was a waitress in casino establishment for 10 years. People taking their own lives did happen, but it wasn't common. Saddest was an Asian woman who hung herself in the toilets. She lost 20K or so from memory and was not a high roller type. 3 to 4 days later, her car was to be towed from the underground car park. Sadly, she left her 2 fluffy dogs in there and nobody knew. Poor things were dead. The establishment then put on parking patrol officers who check cars every few hours. They would find alive dogs and kids in there far too often. I quit after 6 months as I was tired of watching miserable zombies. Story 2. I was dealing high limit one night and a man lost his last two $500 chips for a total loss of $30,000 in about 20 minutes. I know this guy and have dealt to him for many years, so I wasn't totally surprised by this response. He proceeds to stand up, tuck his chair in nice and neatly, and then squares up to me from behind his chair and rips off his own shirt. He was wearing a $400 Robert Graham. Buttons go flying in about 4 different directions, and he lets out a primal scream. The 2 other players were so scared by his delayed reaction that they ducked for cover out of sheer surprise. I'm left staring at him with my mouth to the floor. He's heavily breathing and bare-chested to his belly button and staring at me. I was left speechless as he turned and walked out of the casino to his villa to no doubt break something else. Absolute meltdown. Story 3. Had a roulette spinner tell me that one time a woman came in and gave the woman a check to cash out and announced, "All right, time for me to win my rent money for the month." The dealer handed her the check back and said, "Ma'am, we're not accepting your money at this hotel. Take this check and go pay part of your rent with it and work to pay the rest. This is supposed to be a place of fun, not where you risk your life." Story 4. Forget casinos. I worked at a hole-in-the-wall liquor store. Well, it was more like a scratch-off lottery store that sold liquor. Can't tell you how many times people would spend all their rent money, car payment, and grocery money on scratch-offs. They'd come back in with their kids crying, begging me for their money back after spending like $1,000 every day for a week. "Lady, I just work here. Sorry." Story 5. Friend used to work at a casino in Las Vegas. He said one day a woman came in and gambled away about $30,000, which was her family's life savings, all their money, and also her son's college fund. Few hours later, my friend goes on his break and stumbles upon the lady and her son, around 17, 18, in the parking lot. The kid is absolutely livid. He's screaming at her, calling her every name in the book, yelling that she ruined his life and now he can't go to college because of her, she's dead to him, etc. During all this, his mother is bawling like a baby and pleading with him to stop yelling at her and saying she's sorry. My friend had to call security when the kids started to physically assault her, punching her, slapping her, pulling her hair, etc. When they arrived, though, they saw him drive out of the parking lot and nearly possibly deliberately run over his mother as she, blood gushing out of her nose, was lying on the ground and shrieking for him to stop. Very disheartening, my friend said. Story 6. Dealer for 10 years. Third day dealing. Fresh out of dealer school, I'm dealing Pai Gao tiles. Asian domino game. Try to pair up the tiles and add as close to 9 as possible. On a 25 minimum game, guy bets $25 to $75 for a good 2 hours. He then slides his whole stack on one hand for $3,000. For those who know the game, he gets Tien Dai Bo. I pull Ji Jun. For those who don't know the game, it's like he got pocket kings and I got pocket aces, or he pulled a 20 in blackjack and I pulled 11 cards to make 21. The odds are astronomical. It's the only hand that beats him. He slams his fist on the table, swearing in Chinese. Chips fly everywhere, and he begins to shove fingers down his throat and self-induces vomit all over my game. Close the table and pit down for cleanup. Third day dealing. Money and benefits are great, though. Highly recommend the industry. Made $30 to $40 an hour. Story 7. I was playing poker at a casino years ago. Was playing $5, $10 no-limit hold'em. Over the course of 2 hours, I took 3 huge pots off the same guy. Each time it was a case of me outbetting him. He folds and I muck the winning hand. That means I opted not to show the cards because when the other players fold, you don't have to. On the third big pot I took from him, I showed him my cards for fun. I turned over a garbage hand. He claimed he folded a straight. He got extremely mad and jumped to his feet. Started walking around screaming at the top of his lungs. The next time I have a good hand, you better call my raise and you better frickin' pump it. Security came over and calmed him down, and he agreed to chill out. What happened next was caused by me deliberately. I wanted to poke the bear and see this guy really lose his cool. He calls one of my bets, and the hand involved just the two of us and one other guy. On the river card, the angry guy folds his hand. After me and the other guy bet and raise 2 or 3 times. The other guy folds his hand, and I show another crappy hand to the table. I think it was a missed flush draw. The angry gentleman jumped over the table and tried to hit me. Security was still close by and dragged him out of the poker room. He threw a few punches and we saw them through the doorway. They had him pinned down to the floor with their knees on his neck for 20 minutes while waiting for the police. He was fuming for the first few minutes. And after that, he was trying to apologize and begging them not to get the police involved. Story 8. I was security to casino for a few years. Saddest story for me was this older gentleman, let's call him Tom for privacy's sake. Now, Tom would frequent the casino every day, spending anywhere from $200 to $300. I had struck up a lot of conversations with him because he was a regular, and he was a genuinely kind person who I enjoyed seeing. One day, Tom comes in, and I can tell he was upset. I don't make anything of it, but after seeing the guy for a few years, almost every day that day, he looked really off. So a couple hours go by, and I track him down and ask, "How's the day going? Any big wins?" Just a general chit-chat. He starts sobbing, tears running down his face. His wife had passed away from sudden cardiac death, is what I believe he called it at least. He was devastated. We talked for quite a while. I tried comforting him while he played the machines, and I noticed he was betting extremely large. $200 to $300 per spin on the machine. I knew that was a lot for him, but I didn't say anything because it's not my business. And I was sure it's a coping mechanism for him at the moment, doing something he loved when he just lost the love of his life. Hours later, I see him heading out the door and I run up to him. I catch him and wish him all the best and that I'll see him soon. He smiled, said thanks for the chat and thank you for the condolences and left. He booked a room in our hotel and unalived himself that night. A little while later, I find out through some of our other staff who were sort of friends of his family that he had spent all of his money every dime that evening spinning high limit on the machines. I'm assuming because he wanted a little enjoyment before he took his life. Still makes me upset I didn't invite him over or do anything else because I knew he was in pain. Story 9, ex-casino worker here. I have a couple of stories. We spent 1 hour and 20 minutes on the table before break. 1. A guy went to the ATM about 3 to 4 times and came back with roughly $200 each time. Each time he got more and more nervous. The last time he came to the table, he said, "This is the last of my cash. Hey, this is my rent money." He got down to his last $50 and turned that into like $800. He was the only one at the table, and I said, "Hey, I shouldn't say this, but you should go home. You've done well and you should cash that in and head home." He said, "Thanks, I really appreciate it," and left. He came back after 10 minutes and lost it all. He finished off with him taking off his shoes and putting them on the table and saying, "You've taken everything, you might as well take my shoes too." 2. I was dealing, and this guy came up to my table and cashed in $1,000 each time. He cashed in a total of $4,000. He could be the most aggressive guy I had ever met. He flashed his black card and proceeded to tell me how important he was. He got really aggressive by the $2,000, $3,000 mark and started berating me each time he lost. After a while, I said, "I don't care who you are. You have to treat me with some form of respect." He was putting so much money over the pit bosses did nothing, and he settled a bit after I said that. When I left the table, a young woman replaced me, and I heard he started to do the same thing that he did to me, and she froze mid-hand. She couldn't move as he was yelling at her so much, and she freaked. The pit boss came up to try and defuse the situation, and he hit him. I heard he got a 5-year ban. Story 10. I actually did work in a casino in Las Vegas a few years back in VIP services. One of our high rollers who visited frequently had a very bad gambling problem that his wife was divorcing him over. He lost everything at the tables and couldn't even afford his plane ticket back home. He threatened to go to the roof of the building and throw himself off. The casino felt so sorry for him, we ended up buying a ticket back home for him. Never heard from him again after that. Story 11. I used to be a casino host on cruise ship casinos. Seen many people lose their crap, but there is one woman I'll never forget. She was gambling a lot. Towards the end of the cruise, I would find her on the slots she was crying at and playing. I asked her, "What's wrong?" She said that she couldn't afford to play anymore, and it's all on her credit card. Talking, playing, and crying at the same time. I banned her from the casino, but it was already too late. I also heard stories from colleagues that used to work for an Asian cruise company that they would always keep one lifeboat half lowered because Chinese people would jump overboard after losing all their money. Story 12. Former table dealer here. I've had drunk guys tell me I'm the worst dealer ever. I suck whatever. I would just reply, "Have a nice day." The other people at the table were generally all on my side. I've had high rollers slam the table with their fist or not react at all to losing thousands. The worst and the saddest one that sticks out in my mind, though, is a guy who was around $2,000 down on blackjack. He was nice and he was tipping pretty well. I was rooting for him as I tended to do. I knocked his tens for good luck. Then he lost a big one and just yelled "frick," so loud that the entire casino must have heard it. It was the kind of desperation in his voice and everything about him that told me he could not afford to lose as much as he just lost. He went to the ATM and I rotated to another table. It was stuff like that, the frickin' smoke in my face, sleep deprivation from the late nights that led me to get out of there. A lot of other unpleasant moments too, but they all blur together. Money was nice, but it wasn't for me. Story 13. I sat next to a guy. He drove a Pepsi truck. He said his mom died and left him $30,000. He'd never seen this much money before, so he thought he could turn it into $100. We're at the blackjack table. He's getting wasted and crying inconsistently because of his mom talking about her dying. The cocktail waitresses are teasing him the whole night, and he tips them $25 every drink. In 2 hours, he loses everything. He has this look of nervousness on his face and said his wife is going to end him if she finds out about this. Because they have 4 kids and wanted to buy a house. He walked out and 10 minutes later, I go to my car and see that he got a DUI. In 24 hours, his mom died. He gets a ton of money, loses. It all will probably get divorced, gets a DUI, and is sitting in the back of a cop car with blue balls from the cocktail waitresses. Story 14. Not a casino employee, but when I was in Vegas, I was watching a very intense game of blackjack on Fremont Street. The guy bet everything he had, convinced since he was on a winning streak, this would be the hand that doubled his winnings. Unsurprisingly, he busts. As soon as they swooped his chips away, he began slamming his hands on the table, screaming, "What the hell? What the hell?" With his girlfriend dressed in a cheesy, tight mini dress and 7-inch heels screaming at him and telling him that he promised her a Birkin purse with that money and crying. An unsuspecting guy accidentally bumped into this irate dude, and that just made him lose his mind. A chair went flying. The dude he bumped into stepped up and starts asking him if he wants a piece of this. Shoves are exchanged and the screaming starts just as a high heel is thrown straight past the sore loser's face and right into someone else's head. I wanted to stay and watch the throwdown, but my boyfriend yanked me away with a solid nope, just as well. 2 furious-looking Vegas PD officers were literally shoving their way through the crowd as we stepped away. Story 15. Not an employee, but the first time I was ever in a casino, I was skulking around the blackjack tables. I was baffled by the minimums. 500 $1,000, $5,000 a hand. Edit. Someone has pointed out that I may have been looking at the maximums. It's hard to remember, but I thought it was nuts. This was a busy day and all of them were full. I sat behind the $5,000 table. I watched a guy lose hand after hand after hand. I always figured that when someone bets at these tables, they have so much money that they can afford to throw it away like it was nothing. Not this guy. I don't know if this guy just wanted to be a high roller for the day or what, but he was visibly upset and very quickly bleeding into audibly upset. He lost his last hand and just frickin' lost it. Then he proceeded to rant and rave until the pit boss came over and offered him something or other. He continued to be a giant jerk, so 3 security guards came over and escorted him to the buffet. I like to imagine he tried to get his tens of thousands of dollars back in crab legs. Story 16. Not a casino worker, but when I was at university, I used to deal poker at various reputable bars in establishments around my city and neighboring towns. One night I was dealing at a bar in town that was about a 1.5 hour drive from my home. I used to drive a very recognizable vehicle, and a lot of the regular players knew it because they would see me pull into the car park when I arrived to deal. At about 1 a.m., I had a regular player evicted because he was drunk and being abusive. After I packed up and went to my vehicle at about 3 a.m., I discovered all of my tires had been slashed. My roadside assistance wouldn't help because I was too far away. I had to leave my vehicle and take $250 taxi rides and spend $800 on new tires. As a student, this hurt a lot and precipitated me to leaving the industry. Story 17. Not a casino employee, but worked at a kiosk for a very brief time when I was younger. Back then, we had some slot machines, illegal now to some extent. Current slot machines have tiny spin bets, like a few cents per spin. I'd say that on any given day, we would have around 4 or 5 regulars that would just hang around all day and throw away their money on the machines. These people were 100% addicts. Max bets on such machines were like $500 a spin, which really adds up when you're hanging around the machine 6 to 7 hours a day. After some of them had gambled away, say $1,000, they would start to do weird stuff like writing false out-of-service signs and hang or tape them on the machine while they sprinted or drove home or to the bank to get more money. Their rationale was that if they had fed the machines that much, it would spit out again very soon. And they obviously didn't want any others to win their lost money. One day, let's call her Jane, was playing the machines. She came in with a stack of cash, probably 5 or 10,000. She played away 90% of it, then tried another machine and lost it all. She started screaming, kicking the machines, completely lost it. Turns out she'd been stealing money from her employer and was taking out more and more, hoping to get it all back. I'm not sure why they don't understand that slot machines are a guaranteed loss over time. It's only beneficial if, when you put on some money and by chance win, the right time, if you keep putting your money on the machines, you'll lose every time. Story 18. I've had a few patrons lose a ton and never come back only to find out later they drove their car into a tree or put a shotgun in their mouth. I do have a good story about the worst I saw someone handle a win, though. This older gentleman was a regular and a total jerk. Never tipped, never smiled or said hello, and was always in a foul mood. I was watching him play a 50-cent machine one night when he hit 3 jackpot symbols and won $5,000. I went up to him and congratulated him, and I will never forget the bemused look on his face. When the machine hits a single payout of over $1,200, the machine locks up and won't spin again until an attendant resets it. He just kept hitting the button in vain, trying to play like a child whose toy stopped working. When I told him that the machine wasn't going to spin until we paid him his hand, his only words were, "Can I play with this one?" and motioned to the machine next to his. I told him that he could, and he moved over and went straight back to his zombie-like trance. When we brought his jackpot winnings to him, he huffed and puffed because we asked him to stop playing for mint while we counted out his $5,000. It's like the money didn't even matter. Working at a casino can be a lot of fun, but the worst thing about it is the fact that you know you're a drug dealer and your whole job is to make people keep taking your product. Story 19. Not a casino employee, but just the other day, my father-in-law's security watched an elderly lady lose everything at a poker table, then go around and steal a couple of people's purses, wallets. When they confronted her and asked for ID, she wouldn't give it to them because they weren't the police. When the police arrived, she still wouldn't give them her ID or even her name, saying they couldn't arrest her if they didn't know who she was. Needless to say, they arrested her. The last thing the cop asked her was, "Are you at least going to cooperate and walk out with us to the car? Or are you going to do it the hard way?" They had to carry her out, and she was kicking the windows in the back of the car the entire time. Topic 2. Casino employees of Reddit. What are some of the saddest moments you've witnessed? Story 1. I don't work there, but I was at a table in a casino in Vicksburg, MS, playing Texas Hold'em when a man took a chair next to me with a hospital bracelet on. Seems that many of the people at the table were regulars and congratulated him on his son's birth that had just happened. He was at the tables to earn some money to help pay for the baby and lost around $300 over the next hour. Went home empty-handed. Personally, the saddest part to me was that he was there in the first place. An employee of a casino once told me that the reason they use leather instead of cloth chairs is that when people have lucky slots, they won't get up to go. Also, an employee of a casino once told me that the reason they use leather instead of cloth chairs is that when people have a lucky slot, they won't get up to go to the bathroom. That's pretty sad too. Story 2. I have two bear with me, third day dealing. Fresh out of dealer school. I've been in industry for 10 years now. Anyway, I get put on a game called Pai Gow Tiles. Very difficult game to learn and I loved it. It's difficult for Americans because we are so used to poker rules. In this game, a pair of fours beats the pair of tens. Why screw you, that's why. Anyway, third day dealing on a 25-minute game. Guy is betting 50 to 150 consistently for 3 hours. He builds it up to about 3K, started with 500. He slides it all on one hand. We wish him good luck. He sets his hand excitedly showing the table his monster hand. I, the dealer, pull what's called Jigen or Teen Bow. It is literally unbeatable. It's the God hand. It's a pair of aces, pair of kings. His hand was equal to a pair of queens and a pair of jacks, a 99.9% winner in every other instance. He slams the table. Chips fly everywhere, and he begins to self-induce vomiting. He succeeds. Splatters everywhere. Security is on him within seconds. Banned for life. Whole pit closes due to biohazard. He did not leave a tip. Second story, dealing for about 9 years now. I'm dealing Pai Gow poker, not tiles like above. Full table. This game involves a lot of pushes, which is why I enjoy playing. $200 at 10 to 20 a hand can have you playing for 2 hours, no problem, due to so many pushes. The reason to play this game is the bonus bet. Catching 4 of a kind, straight flushes, royal flushes pay huge. Even if you lose the hand and have a bonus, the bonus pays. Now the twist is, if you bet $5 or more, you get envy bonus, which means if anyone else at the table hits a monster bonus, you get paid some money too. 5 players playing 4-play bonus and have envy active. The one player not playing bonus bets his last $15. No money for the bet and the bonus, and wakes up with the best hand possible. 7 cards straight flush, no joker. Joker is a wild card used to make straights flushes or act as a 5th ace. He shows the table and everyone cheers and is excited, because their $5 bet wins them each $5,000. If the man had played it, his bonus would have paid $8,000 to 1. $5 nets him 40K, but he didn't. So he shows the table. Look, I didn't play the bonus. I'm going to win nothing while you all win $5,000 each through envy. Will each of you throw me $1,000 so we all walk away with $4,000 each? They start screaming at him, shouting, "No, screw you. How dare you ask us that we earn this, etc., etc." He kind of frowns and lets out a small sigh, mucks the hand to the dealer. The table loses it. "No, what are you doing? Take it back. We'll give you the 1,000. I, the dealer inside, am like, "Hell yeah, bro, screw those greedy jerks." They all get 5K each off your hand while you win nothing. They call managers over demanding they be paid because he had the bonus hand. But until it is legally set by the player and the dealer reveals it to the camera, the patron may fold their hand freely and forfeit their bet. He walked away shouting back, "Hey, we all could have 4,000 each, but you want to be greedy." It was fantastic, so I guess it's sad for the greedy people at least. Story 3, I was a cashier for the food outlets in the casino. I saw a kid come into the diner inside the casino. He sat down and just stared straight ahead with a blank look on his face. Server went up to him and the kid asked, "How do I tell my parents I just lost my college money?" I'm sure there were more, but that's the main one I remember. Also, if you go to casinos, please don't treat the employees like crap because you screwed up and lost all your money. It's not our fault you don't have any self-control. I'm happy I don't work there anymore. It was honestly the lowest point in my life. Edit. Just remembered another one. College-age couple comes in and are there for a while. The girl goes into the bathroom and the guy waits outside. After about 15 minutes, he asks a passing lady to check on her because she hasn't answered his text. Lady comes back out and grabs a security guard. The girl had sliced her wrist while in the bathroom with her boyfriend waiting maybe 15 feet away. Luckily, I was on my way out that night, so I wasn't around for the rest of it. It was the bathroom right by the outlet I was working in. Edit 2. And no, not going to read the edit. It's too long and not interesting. Story 4. Parents used to own a small casino. 15-ish tables, $100 limits. I worked weekends in the cage. Employees were allowed to gamble once off shift, and I watched one guy after getting off of work around 7 p.m. proceed to lose his house payment, car payment, child support, max out his credit cards, everything. All by the time we closed at 6 a.m. I wasn't a huge gambler before that, but seeing that firsthand scared me off of taking any chances in a casino beyond casual playing. Story 5. Not a casino story, however, in North Carolina, gambling hasn't always been legal. A few years ago, I was helping manage a local grocery store, and we had a regular. She was always pleasant, always got her things, and left quickly, until the scratch-off dispensing machine was installed. Within less than a month, she went from a chipper old blonde lady to the strange wrinkled witch at the scratch-off machine. She'd spent her entire month's Social Security within a few minutes, then scurry off to the next door to test her luck and come back to me. It was an everyday thing that came out of nowhere. She spent her brother's prescription money and begged me to sell her a Powerball ticket because she might win him some chemo, and he would be thankful. Needless to say, that was one of my last lottery sales. Story 6. A couple that used to come to gamble at a casino I worked at unalived themselves after losing too much money. Same casino had a patron whose son came in to tell her to stop and that she couldn't keep gambling the family's money away. She would easily lose over $10,000 on a lot of days she went in. You get pretty desensitized to the plight of the gambler at your table, but the double unalive and the yelling son stuck with me. Story 7. Guy hit a jackpot for $30,000. In my area, that's life-changing money. He was supposed to go see his son in a different state. He went to a different casino and lost the jackpot and then some. He didn't go see his son. He didn't go to the job that he makes $2 to $3K a week at. He stayed at the casino for a week and lost his job. He lost his truck that he was sleeping in. I don't know what happened to him after he was evicted for harassing any woman that walked past him. Story 8. Not a casino, but a charity poker room at a bowling alley where I was a dealer. Guy was pretty drunk and just so bad at poker. Kept losing the max buy-in $500, and he would go straight to the ATM and rebuy. With every rebuy, the desperation became greater and greater. I just wanted to tell him to pack it up before he lost more, but that would have probably cost me my job. Eventually, I think he must have emptied his bank account. I had never seen someone lose so much money in one night. Story 9. Former poker dealer at a casino. An older gentleman started to have a heart attack at the table. I called the floor person for assistance with the call button. Paramedics are rushed in, etc., all within minutes. In this instance, I'm instructed to keep the game rolling by the floor person as he whispered in my ear. 2 hands are dealt and played, and a player at the table requested that the heart attack guy get moved somewhere else as it's disrupting the game. Another player asked to have his chips picked up and call for the open seat because we have a wait list. I was disgusted. Story 10. Not a casino employee. My story comes from my time in the military. Slot machines are everywhere in Germany. The small post I was on had a few slot machines in a back room of the bowling alley. One of our NCOs would go every payday and blow his entire paycheck over lunch. We would know if he won or not by the mood he was in after lunch. When he won, he would tell us about winning $600 after dropping $1,500 into the machine. Story 11. Don't work in a casino, but I go to a smaller casino here in Vegas where a lot of locals go to play. Lady hits $40K on a Keno game. After she got paid out, she was walking around giving all her friends and people she chats with $100 bills. I left shortly after because I just go to buy smokes and play my change here and there. So I'm not sure if she played more that night. About a week later, she was in there playing every time I went in to buy smokes, so I'm sure that money disappeared quickly. Story 12. Atlantic City around 20 years ago. One of the 3 times I tried gambling in my life, saw an elderly couple crying while talking to a security guard. They were telling him they had no money to pay the tolls to get home. I remember thinking the guard was a real jerk. No emotion on his face as he told them they had to leave the casino. After they left, though, he announced to everyone who had stopped to listen that the casino had already given them money to get home, which they had turned around and gambled away, putting them back at square one. I don't know what was worse, seeing an elderly couple cry, seeing this dude just jaded by his terribly necessary job, or just seeing that side of gambling. I'm grateful I was never bitten by that bug. Story 13. Not a casino, but volunteered at a local fireman's carnival bingo night. 20-something lady was playing quarter per game bingo with roll after roll of silver quarters. I tried explaining to her that they were worth more than a quarter, and she didn't care, and kept playing with a look of desperation in her eyes. Never won a game that night. In my mind, she was blowing through a coin collection that her parent or grandparent had carefully put together. Story 14. Didn't work in the casinos, but sad story. When I was in college, I worked at Target. The security guard there was a nice man, but whenever he talked about going to the casinos, he seemed a little too excited. Like it was Christmas whenever he would go. I was the manager for the front end, so he and I would talk a lot because he would accompany me as I grabbed all the cash at the night so I wouldn't get mugged. That's all he talked about. He went to the casinos about 3 times a week. He was in his early 50s and still lived at home. Being a security guard at Target in your 50s, living with your mom, told me he probably had a gambling addiction and lost a lot. A few months later, he stopped coming into work. Found out he finally lost it all and unalived himself. Story 15. I know I'm late to the party, but I have one that has stuck with me. 5-year employee at a casino. An older couple 60s would come in 5 to 7 nights a week. The casino term is that they are avid, experienced players, i.e. addicted. She would go upstairs to play slots and he would play cards downstairs. A sizable group of executive-level casino employees made their way to her machine and asked her to have a quick word in private. She refused to leave the machine. They attempted to ask her again to speak in private, but she very forcefully declined to leave. She demanded to know what they wanted. So one of the members let her know that her husband had a heart attack and he was being rushed to a nearby hospital. Her response, "Give me his wallet," and went right back to the machine. Broke my heart even when I think about it more than a decade later. He died that night. She didn't leave until the next morning. Story 16. I worked at a casino as a dealer through college. A lot of incidents were pretty sad, especially with regulars you liked. One regular would tell me about his middle school-age kids, and then I would realize the next week or so later that he was missing their school plays or recitals, etc., because he was at the tables. I remember working overnight one Christmas Eve and begging him to go home when 6 or 7 a.m. rolled around because his kids would be up and opening presents. Other times, people just scream at you for stealing their mortgage payments from them that month and then seeing them back again the next day. Story 17. It's been about 15 years, but I worked in one for about 4 years. The one that stands out was a woman who came from the country to the big city to get Christmas gifts for the whole family, including young kids who still believed in Santa, and all of that, but spent all of the Christmas money at the casino before going to the mall. Also, a few years later, I went back to visit, and when talking to one of the pit bosses about who was still there and whatnot, she told me one of my regulars, who was actually nice and likable, a rare trait in that business, had recently unalived themselves as a result of gambling too much. Story 18. Former valet at a casino. The amount of daily regulars who drove barely functioning vehicles full of trash, roaches and rats, who would actually valet their car to go and gamble away any money they had, to their name was honestly depressing. The saddest I remember was a 90-plus-year-old lady who drove a 91 Corolla, and when we got into her car, we realized she had no power steering fluid at all, and her steering wheel would barely turn. I have no earthly idea how her frail arms could turn it. We went and bought her some before she left that evening. Story 19. We had to evacuate and close down for the rest of the day due to a burst pipe causing no running water. When I walked outside, there was an elderly lady throwing a legit tantrum in the parking lot. She was on the ground kicking and screaming. Her scream sounded like something you'd expect from someone who lost a family member, not someone who had to leave the casino for a few hours. I left, but some of the security who were dealing with her told me later that she was too upset to drive home, and they had to call a family member to pick her up. I've seen some stuff. A lot of what others have commented is fairly common, but this was definitely the most messed up. Story 20. Grandmother, mother, and daughter heading to the casino by car from 2 hours away. Mother had a postcard to get a free cast iron pan for showing up. Daughter is more than 8 months pregnant. 1 hour away from the casino, daughter starts to have labor pains. Mother won't stop and take her to the hospital. She's got to have that $10 pan. They arrive at the casino an hour before the promotion was going to start. Mother raises all hell trying to get her pan, but the workers for the promo haven't arrived yet. Daughter ends up having to be transported by ambulance to the hospital, all over a $10 pan. Story 21. Worked in a casino for about 7 years, And the one that has always stuck with me was when a kid 18, 19 came in with his friends and lost $100 playing blackjack. Then he was sitting there looking dejected and watching his friends win. He left and came back with another $100. I could tell from the way he was acting, he probably didn't have the original $100 to lose, so he definitely couldn't afford to lose another 100. So I asked if he was sure he wanted to play. He nodded his head and solemnly said yes. Unfortunately, he lost to that money too. Story 22. A woman approximately mid-30s dancing her butt off on the dance floor of the nightclub and suddenly dropped dead. I watched her die. Or the time a VIP booth was packed, drinks flowing, everybody picking up on the guy that passed out. End of night comes and they tell us he's going to need a wheelchair. Not uncommon. Guy was dead a good hour. The deaths always bug me. Casinos get a treatment similar to airports. The unspoken rule is to treat them as if alive until they get off the premises, even if they're an hour dead. The goal is to get them out as quickly as possible without freaking out the patrons. New Year's was always stressful. It was never a question of if someone would die that night, it was a question of how many. A good year would be one. One year we had 4. Story 23. I did casino security for 3 years before I became a police officer. Had a Code M medical early one morning around 4 or 5 a.m. Old guy in his 80s passed out and fell out of his chair, wife sitting next to him. I was the first to get to him. Did a quick assessment and found he didn't have a pulse. Immediately started CPR. The old lady looked over and said, "Oh, he does this all the time. Don't worry about him." Between chest compressions, I told her he wasn't breathing, and she just kept playing her slot machine. She didn't miss a spin even when the paramedics took him away. I saw her again the next night and asked how he was doing. With the straightest face ever, she said, "Oh, he never woke up. I'm sure he's in a freezer by now," and went right back to the same machine she was playing the night before. I feel like slot machines are the gambling machines you play when your soul has died. Story 24. I wasn't a casino employee, but I was an EMT in a certain beach town on the East Coast that could be described as bargain bin Vegas. On a given shift, we would probably field 3 or 4 casino calls more in the summer. It was pretty soul-crushing. Most calls were alcohol-related or obvious slip-and-fall scams, but occasionally we would happen upon some real tragedies. Attempts to self-unalive ODs, assaults. They all happened with depressing frequency. This one sticks with me the most, though. One day we had a call for a woman in her 70s sitting at the slots, experiencing chest pain around 2 a.m. She refused treatment despite being in bad shape. We pleaded and begged and even had the on-call cardiologist talk to her on the phone, but she was on a streak and wouldn't hear it. An hour later, we were back doing CPR. She died right there in front of the same slot machine with a receipt for $7 in winnings. Super messed up. The amount of employees we had to treat for exhaustion or diabetic-related emergencies due to them not having enough breaks to manage their blood sugars was also super screwed up. In short, screw that town. Topic 3. What is something that happens at casinos that's hidden from the public? Old people dying. Story 1. Self-unalivings. Properties go to great lengths to hide these events from the public given how bad for business it is. But it happens and quickly taken care of. It's a very open but grim secret amongst casino workers apparently. Story 2. I knew a couple who worked the cage and the floor at a Hard Rock, and they used to tell me stories about this. When they found someone dead at a machine, they'd quietly get them into a wheelchair, put a blanket over them, and roll them out the back to a waiting ambulance. They also talked about how often people would unalive themselves. One guy climbed the safety fence and jumped off the top of the parking garage, and they found a lot of people dead in their bathtub in various ways. That and watching someone bet and lose the same amount as my student loans in about 5 minutes absolutely ruined casinos for me. They just depressed the crap out of me. So I think this again speaks to the hazards of gambling and why you should either not do it or gamble responsibly. Losing your life savings and going tens of thousands into debt, I can see how people can feel hopeless in situations like that. And speaking of the younger folks and not the older ones, so yeah, please, please, please take this as yet another reminder to gamble responsibly or not at all. You'll be okay without that extra money. Story 3. I wandered down to the basement of MGM from a truck ramp, and man, it was like a whole city down there. Imagine a massive warehouse with roads and offices and supplies everywhere. the opposite of the glitz going on above it. Story 4. My wife is friends with a lady whose husband drives VIPs around for a casino. The top guys get assigned a special room with their own private butler. They might be gambling 100K a hand and tipping 5K for drinks, rides, etc. This reminded me of a story I heard when I was living in Australia. At the time, one of the richest guys in Australia was Kerry Packer. Old man Packer liked to gamble and would regularly fly to Vegas and gamble huge. I dated a girl at the time who was a dealer in one of his casinos and said he was known to tip big, and once had asked a cocktail waitress how much she had left on her mortgage and tipped her that much. Several years later, I was in Vegas talking to a pit boss and was relaying this story, and without missing a beat, he said, "That's a true story." Story 5. How much money goes unclaimed and uncollected? I worked in the accounting department at one of my main gaming conglomerates and was tasked with cleaning up their unclaimed property accounts. There were players, aka whales, who deposited millions and just forgot about it for years. Story 6. I'm not sure about Western casinos, but this is for Asian casinos. Asians generally subscribe to the supernatural and definitely the superstitions that go along with gambling. Casino owners tend to hire ghost babies' toils or kumantong's aborted baby spirits to kind of curse players into losing. Superstitious players will bring candies, toss them under tables, so the ghost babies leave them alone because of the candy bribe and let them win. Story 7. A couple are not hidden, but not obvious to the average casino goer. Some casinos add sense to the air. They do not pump in extra oxygen, and as some people believe, they also keep the temperatures on the cool side to keep people from getting sleepy. No clocks on the walls, and in general, no windows with views to the outside. Story 8 used to be a blackjack dealer in Nevada. To me, the most disgusting thing was watching people I knew who were struggling to feed their families come in and feed their entire paycheck into a slot machine or gaming table. And I was never allowed to say anything not on or off the job. I ended up quitting as it was so depressing. Story 9. You won't find clocks on the walls. Dealers are generally forbidden from wearing watches, and the vast majority of casinos do not have windows to the outside. The few you can maybe from the floor are usually heavily tinted, and the lighting inside generally stays the same 24/7. This is because they limit your ability to tell time as much as possible to the extent they can control so that you're more likely to lose track and stay longer. The longer you play, the better the odds of losing, because the odds are always in the house's favor. Any game that requires some version of commission for a wager banker and back means that the odds are either even or ever so slightly in favor of that wager, so they add a commission to even it back out. No game added to the floor is random. All the odds are figured out way before it's ever even considered being offered from sale. The bonus sounds on slot machines are bullcrap. The outcome is determined, and no matter what you do in that bonus, you'll get the amount the machine has determined for that jackpot. Slot machines are the adult equivalent of those infant toys that light up and make sounds when played with some added psychology. Bet 100 spin you 160. No dumbass, you lost 40 and got to watch some lights and listen to some sounds. I can almost always tell a high roller slots player based on their decision to have taxes withheld from large jackpots. The big fish know they'll likely break even over the course of the year at best and won't owe anything. Casinos are regulated like banks and report financial transactions just like banks. Don't want to give an ID for that $10,000 in chips you're trying to cash. You'll be refused. Multiple transactions that add up to $10,000 ID, please. Try to beat the system by structuring, having a friend cash out, etc. Gonna report you to the government for possible money laundering activity. We can see every slot machine, screen, and table game on camera 24/7. You break something like punching the screen, which is more common than you think will ID you, and you'll get a bill. Also, probably evicted. ETA, if you take away nothing from any of my comments in here, know this. The only way to guarantee you walk out of a casino with more money than you went in with, without committing a crime, is to work there. No counting cards is not a guarantee, but it is legal. That said, you aren't Tommy Highland unless Tommy's on Reddit. Then okay, one of you is Tommy. I'd love to chat in person sometime. Working there has cured me of ever wanting to go there for fun. I can drink, smoke, and play poker at home. Story 10. In the basement tunnels and hallways that everyone else is going on about, human hands are ripping open every garbage bag to sort through for recyclables and stuff. That thing you tried hiding, we found it all wrapped up. In the weird bathroom, the thing you tried to hide, we know. It happens more often than you think. You're not alone, weirdo. Story 11. I was in the casino business for over 20 years, pretty high up in management. Just when you think you've seen it all, something will happen that's so incredibly crazy. The people crapping, peeing, puking, spitting on the floor happens constantly. Employees hooking up people doing it in cars and ramp. By the way, surveillance can see everything, including white powder lines on the dashboard, service animals peeing, etc. Employee theft, people getting arrested and dragged out in handcuffs, fights, stabbings, death. Story 12. Robberies and murders. The father of a friend of mine was robbed, stabbed, and killed in the parkade of a local casino in the late 90s after he won big. It never made the news, and a friend of mine who worked at the same casino 5 years later swore I was making it up because she had never heard anything about it. After talking to a few security guys, she finally had someone give her an off-the-record wink-nod confirmation that it did happen, but they went the extra mile to keep the story buried. Story 13. If you like to play slot machines, never play penny slots. Those are the machines that make the casinos their most money. Play quarter and dollar machines, you spend just as much or less each spin, and they tend to have better payouts. But your brain says penny slots are cheaper, but they have machines that you can hit $20 a spin and higher. Where I used to work, penny machines had a 14% hold, while quarter and dollar machines had an 8% hold. The hold is how much the machine will win over the lifetime of the machine. The higher the hold, the more likely you are not to win. Also, a machine is never due. They use random number generators that act the moment you hit the spin button or pull the arm. The machine already knows if you've won or not, and everything you see in front of you is for your entertainment. Always use your player's card. Yes, they track your play and try to lure you back based on how you play, but it's also how they determine if they give you things. Every casino has its own scent. They want you to associate that smell of the casino subconsciously. It's like going to the movies and you smell the popcorn and your brain is ready for the experience. Story 14. My cousin works at a casino and depending on what table he's working, requires a uniform vest, cucumber, tie clip change. There's a large employee room with hundreds of lockers. He shares his with two others that usually work different shifts in areas than him. In the locker are 6 hooks, 2 for each person, a top cubby with 3 sections for water bottles, etc., a lower section with 3 sections for boots and change clothes, and above the footwear section, a 3-section mini locker that you bring your own lock where you put your wallet, valuables, etc., that you can't have on your person when you're on the floor. The lockers are large enough to keep your section closed if you want to swap during your shift. He only very rarely runs into a locker buddy unless they've picked up an extra shift or if there's a special event. He's super short and his locker mates are a very tall man and an average height woman. He thinks locker mates are chosen very specifically to avoid thefts, minimal contact, etc., though he can't prove that. Story 15. Not totally hidden from the public scene, since I, a member of the public, was shown it, but major casinos in Vegas have an armory room, stockpiles of weapons and tactical gear. I was staying at a casino on the main strip and had a number of guns with me for a meetup at a nearby shooting range and asked the front desk if they had somewhere I could keep them since I didn't really like the idea of leaving them unattended in my room or car. A security guy came out and said, "Follow me to the armory," and led me to an extremely secure room full of all kinds of rifles and vests and whatnot, pointed to an empty locking cabinet I could put my stuff in, and gave me a claim ticket to pick them back up again later. Story 16. I worked at a casino, the resort portion of the casino, for a summer. I don't have any sordid secrets, but general interesting things I learned. The security cameras are very good, like, can read your name off your badge hanging off your waist good. You aren't doing a damn thing the camera can't see. At this casino, employees were required to wear badges clearly visible at all times when on the premises, even if not on the clock. Escorting your grandma to the bingo hall after your shift badge still better be visible. In the parking lot, badge still better be visible. At this casino, employees were only allowed to gamble there 1 day a month. You'd think you'd be money right back into the casino's pocket, but they didn't want the risk of an employee being heavily in debt, which leads to the next point. Anyone getting a job within the casino itself is getting background checked, especially for bad credit and outstanding debts. If you're a guy down on his luck with some maxed out credit cards and you want a job to get back on your feet, the casino doesn't want you. You're a liability, you're not worth the risk. All the cash goes into the vault. I assume it's a literal bank vault, but I've never seen the vault. Most employees have never seen the vault. You don't F around when it comes to the vault. You better have a real good reason why you're approaching the vault. Security will turn your ass around and send you on your way, and you'll probably be flagged for questioning. People don't just stumble onto the vault, you end up there knowingly. And unless you are specifically by name called to the vault, or you have an urgent reason for being at the vault for which you've already radioed ahead, showing up at the vault is a red flag. The community is going to have a two-sided relationship with the casino. This casino was on a reservation. Older generations see the casino as a chance to reinvest in the community, and it really does. Community centers, libraries, etc., all paid for directly by the casino. I've never spoken to the tribe elders, but I have spoken to older people, and they all see opportunities for better lives for their kids and grandkids thanks to the casino. Younger generations suffer from some of the worst entitlement I've seen because of the casino. I can't tell you how many times in one summer I heard, "My family owns this casino. My family owns you. I can do what I want." Official policy was no one gets special treatment, even res kids. In practice, a lot of blind eyes get turned for people from the res. Obviously not when it comes to any gambling. That crap's a zero-tolerance policy. But the resort bowling alley movie theater that were owned and operated by the casino, it's a shame seeing the older generation look at the casino as a blessing to their people and younger people seeing it as a place where rules don't apply to them because their grand uncle is an elder or something. Story 17, ex-casino employee here. There are cameras everywhere, both in front of house casino floor restaurants, etc., and back of house kitchens, offices, etc. The only places where there aren't cameras are the bathrooms in the employee changing rooms and the wardrobe room where the employees get fitted for their uniforms. Others have mentioned people peeing or crapping on themselves. However, there are also pregnant women whose water will break and they'll refuse to go to the hospital. This has happened more than once at the casino I work cage at. The amount of times a slot machine had to be taken out to be repaired because someone put holy water on it, that happened a lot. Story 18. I only have the one experience that likely doesn't qualify because I still have no idea what was happening or why. I was collecting water samples at a major casino hotel for Legionella, testing a big deal for any hospitality-type industry. They were diligent and had consistently good results, just FYI. We were down on the floor with the villas. We'd already passed a couple levels of security. The presidential suite was empty. We were given a key and took our time. But when we were halfway down a hallway for the villas, two very large men in suits, I'm a fairly well-built man, but I understood my place at that moment, came up and angrily asked for verification and then radioed in our credentials. They very bluntly told hotel security that they were meant to have complete privacy. Once they were clear, they told us to mind our business and move on quickly. A third, very angry, albeit very well-dressed giant of a man walked out of a room as we walked by. What I saw was a giant U-shaped sectional sofa with a couple dozen or more elderly men in suits. Behind each man was a beautiful, very scantily dressed, much younger woman. They all stared blankly at me and my coworker as we passed. We were told to get the F out of there in a way that we, with puckered buttholes, listened to. Bizarre experience, but I thought it basically confirmed what I thought about Vegas. Story 19. In Atlantic City, there are a lot of unused stairwells and corridors, especially now that the casinos are not as busy. Many homeless people find their way into them and live. A friend of mine told me about a time they were using a stairwell to move furniture and drywall for a remodel. They found two landings with beds and clothing there, and one resident claimed he had been there for over a year. Story 20. When I was in college, I read Fools Die by Mario Puzo. It's about the casino industry and specifically about the security at casinos. My friend's uncle was the head of security at a casino, and we went to meet him at his job. I was really excited to actually see what I had read about. He was nice enough to meet with us, but one of the first things he said was, "Of course I can't show you any of the security because that's confidential." Suck. Story 21. In Las Vegas, the sheer amount of data that's collected and analyzed on everything, from the weekend traffic coming from LA, the demographics going to see a concert or show, and how that impacts staffing everything about your slot or table play, down to the size of the pans used in a buffet relate to food waste. Story 22. All of the pissing and crapping stories makes me think about a time that I was at the Cosmo in Las Vegas. I was playing a slot machine and really had to pee and was going through the last few spins when bam, I won $200-ish. I pressed the button for the little paper winnings thing to come out and the screen said attendant called. I waited and almost pissed myself until they finally came and paid me. I struggled with the do I piss myself dilemma. If I was staying at the hotel and could have gotten showered and changed, I might have. Story 23. Not sure about all the casinos, but security banging the restaurant girls was pretty common where I worked. Manager of the restaurant got fired for having sex in the back on the prep table. Apparently, there are lots of cameras in casinos. Who knew? Story 24. I used to work at an Indian casino who was a customer of ours. The tribe takes their cut and basically don't work or even show up. A few of the kids were given token jobs like security, but just sit in the booth, not actively doing anything. Everyone else who had to pick up the slack hated them. The main board is called the Tribal Council, and although they had primo parking spots, they never showed up when I was there. I sold to their IT department, and as a whole was shocked how much access they had to all the systems. We could pull up real-time slot machine traffic and payouts. We could access everyone the security cameras picked up. Anybody with a player's card, we could track their movements and winnings. Anybody staying at the hotel, they knew everything about them and their spouses. Story 25. Burglaries of the rooms. I was staying at the Four Queens downtown many years ago, and my room was burglarized in what was clearly an inside job. Housekeeping had cased the room. They picked which bags had which items at the time. Then when the burglary happened later that evening, they ignored much more valuable items and bags that had not arrived until later and were not part of the initial scan. They then tried to extort us after calling later at night. Management would not provide video call logs or other data and was totally useless, as interestingly was LVPD. Never in my life has it been clear that something was organized crime. Story 26. Former addict. I spent days and days on end inside casinos. They're amazing and wonderful, and I still love them. Just in my few months there, I saw 4 deaths, all heart attacks. I think all of them are in unsettled hours like 4 a.m. They put a portable curtain around the parish and the emergency people do what they need to do. The security gets very defensive with anyone coming near the curtains. One of my friends unalived himself after losing tens of thousands, several nights on end. Good man, heart of gold, miss him so much. That's what got me to stop. The addiction part is what's not fun. Story 27. I worked at MGM for a while. Overall, it sucked, to be honest, but I will say they had an incredible break room, like full-on restaurant-quality food for us, no charge. Even cooks you could custom order sandwiches from if you didn't want the meals on offer for that night. I put on a bit of weight working there. On extremely gluttonous days, I would get to work, eat some corn or clam chowder before work, break time full meal of like meat, potatoes, veggies, etc. Then at the end of my shift around 8 a.m. could even go in again and have pancakes and bacon. Just ridiculous, honestly. I'm talking real food. Don't imagine microwave stuff. Story 28. Self-unalivings are a big one. There's a certain town within a certain falls in a casino that has connections with local media to not report on people jumping over the edge to self-unaliving because they ruined their life at the casino. To say nothing of the broke people who lost everything trying to hitch a free ride back to the big city. In big ones, there's a guy whose job it is to pick up high rollers at the airport, wait on them at every moment, give them the luxury penthouse suite at the hotel, etc. They do this to make them feel important, and they know it's an investment. They get these guys to spend insane amounts of money. Louis Theroux has a good documentary on this. Story 29. When I worked at a tribal casino for 2 different positions, I went through orientation for each time. I remember we were told that it was encouraged to befriend the customers who frequent the casino a lot. This includes trying to figure out why they have so much money. Also, the application to this casino stated that they preferred to hire those who were Native American. I'm a member of the tribe despite being very white, so I don't know if I was picked for my papers, but whatever. Don't work at a casino, people. They profit off of vices. Story 30. Casino employee here. A little about me. I was a dealer for 14 years across 3 properties across the country. Now I'm a pit manager. Couple of things. If you see a door in the bathroom painted the same color as the walls, it's for security. They enter through that door to rescue anybody who ODs. Where we have a paramedic station, if the power goes out, we have generators. However, our power comes back on before the hospital. Self-unalivings are more frequent than you think at casinos, whether it's in their own vehicle or outside or on the gaming floor. Card counting is not illegal. However, most who think they can can't, and the ones who can can't manage a bankroll. Thus, we rarely have issues. Feel free to ask me anything. Story 31. I worked at casinos on the Strip in the 90s. The stuff that the eyes security cameras catch during the adult content convention surprised me, and I was pleasantly surprised that the adult content industry folks were the nicest, most polite customers and tons of fun to serve because they had such a great time and treated staff very well. Story 32. Company will call us out to courtesy to let us know they took someone's vehicle. Can't pay their car payment, but come gamble for hours. Story 33. Secret VIP doors. I used to hang with high rollers. If you wagered over about $400K a year at the casino, you're given a VIP card to access private rooms and lounges. Randomly next to a slot machine in the wall would be a card reader. Even if you did see it, you might assume it's a staff area, but in reality, it was a VIP lounge. One door opens to a huge balcony overlooking the lobby. Full bar food and private staff that will take care of you. Story 34. I worked at a racetrack casino for a summer, and what surprised me the most was how intense the hiring and training process was. I knew there would be a background check and drug test, but I also had to get certified by my state's Racing and Games Commission. It wasn't a difficult process, but it took forever, and they took my fingerprints, which I thought was weird. It was basically like I was getting security clearance, and everyone who worked there had to do it, even if they were working at the adjoining hotel and never stepped foot into the actual casino. Once I got hired, I had to watch a bunch of orientation videos that were required by the state or federal government. One was about recognizing the signs of gambling addiction and when to intervene with guests who showed these signs, like how bartenders have to cut people off. It was pretty obvious that they only showed that video because they had to, and they didn't want us to cut off their best customers. And then there was a PowerPoint and quiz mandated by a federal agency, either the FBI, IRS, or SEC, I can't remember, about fraud and tax evasion. Basically, if someone won over a certain amount, I think $5,000 in one day, they had to report their winnings to the IRS before they could leave with their money. And there were ways that people tried to game the system to get out of paying taxes, like they would cash out just under the threshold. So if the $5,000 number was correct, they would cash out at $49.99 and wait to collect more until the next day. So either they do a transaction before midnight and another after, or they take their chips home to bring back later. Or they could get other people to collect money for them. So casino staff was supposed to be on lookout for any sort of shady behavior that could be tax avoidance. And if you had suspicions, but no proof, they had a computer program for you to input profiles with any details you could gather. Name, physical description, amount 1, so security could keep an eye out. I never had to do this since I worked at the racetrack and not the actual casino, but it was crazy to me that the dealers and other casino employees had to worry about all that on top of their regular job duties. The pay was pretty good, but not enough for investigating financial crimes IMO. Story 35. The large and growing binders filled with homes and properties that casinos end up owning because people are so sure they're going to win, they borrow against their mortgage and lose. A friend of mine's wife was an EA for the head of finance at a local casino and mentioned to her that he doesn't want to be in the real estate business as they had hundreds of mortgages in those binders they needed to clear, sell, and escrow away from people who couldn't pay their debts. For casinos on Native American grounds, the amount of essay that happens against female staff by male elders who are apparently immune to prosecution on their own lands, They just terminate the workers who even hint at filing complaints because those labor laws can't be enforced on their lands. I've heard firsthand about grabbing stories where the waitresses have to just deal with it, or they can leave or be shown the door. The sheer amount of stealthy surveillance and tracking the moment you walk in the door. They know based on the NFC and the casino card they mailed you the moment you walk in. They have your name, age, income, and where you are in the casino. They'll route people out to find you by name and upgrade your card to allow you greater use of the facilities. This all happens well before advanced facial recognition starts mapping your movements through the gaming floors. Story 36. If a death occurred in a casino or a casino hotel resort, the time of death cannot be declared until it's off the property at the hospital or on arrival. This spans from peaceful deaths during sleep or after scraping the body off the pool deck after the person jumped from above. The last thing casinos want is the number of deaths, or rather self-unalivings, officially linked to them. Story 37. Worked for a tribal council but heard stories from the casino. Typical tribal members drunk and going into the casinos and telling all the white employees they own them. Also at this casino, tribal members received a 4 to 5 figure check per month just for being a member and having a casino. Tons of women showing up claiming to have tribal babies for the money, and they hated other tribes, especially the poor ones. Story 38. My partner worked at a casino for 7 years. Honestly, a lot of rumors are completely fake. There were no secret entrances and bathrooms to sneak out deceased patrons, no small rooms for kneecapping, no big vault full of a day's potential payouts and cash. What's something that isn't strictly hidden but very clearly considered? Note, this is Australia where there are very few casinos, but the ones are massive. The fact that there are so many staff, from dealers to cleaners to kitchen hands, the mortality rate of staff is high. When you have 5 times the amount of staff, 5 times the amount of staff die while employed. Seems innocuous in percentages, but when you start using numbers, it gets alarming. I'm not sure if it's confirmation bias or another term, but it's a fun way to shock people at parties. Story 39. Prostitution. Not talking, Nevada. Washington state casinos, run by Vegas companies in small towns on reservations, does not help the communities they're in. Many work there for minimum wage and gamble away their meager earnings. Meth and fentanyl are rampant and trafficked on the premises. Story 40. Here in Australia, it's money laundering. Any gambling wins here are tax-free, so you've got crap loads of dirty cash and you need to clean it. Go to any pub, club, casino, etc. and start feeding your ill-gotten gains into a pokey machine. Press collect and hey, presto, clean money. You don't even need to play, just collect tax-free cash. Story 41. I don't know if this is still done, but many years ago, I worked at Sahara Tahoe. And in our paycheck envelopes, the management would put 5 drink tokes that were good for 5 free drinks. It was introduced as an employee benefit, but you could only use the drink tokes in the casino bars, not in the restaurant or the hotel bars. Now here's the kicker. If you cashed your paycheck at a casino cashier, again, not at any of the hotel or restaurant cashiers, they would give you 10 more drink tokes. So what you would have on payday is many of the staff with a bunch of drinks under their belt and thousands of dollars in their pockets wandering around the casino. It wasn't hard to see what the hotel wanted us to do with the cash. Story 42. Oh, my time to shine. There's a glass in one of our sauces in the restaurant I worked in at the casino. Oh, and the surveillance is insane. Even when I worked there 15 years ago, it was super detailed, top-of-the-line tech. I worked in a casino for 3 years in one of their restaurants. We left a dead guy and just closed the bar he died in, left the rest of the place open, and redirected guests who wanted to sit at a bar to the restaurant. Oh, also the time one woman got angry and crapped across the whole casino. They had to block it off for like a week so they could replace the carpet. She was so angry at losing all her money, she dropped her pants and crapped a line across the carpet. Story 43. Robbery, stabbings, urinating, and defecating wherever you are because you don't want to vacate your poke machine, sit at the table, or whatever. Don't let old, toothless, charming Cyril fool you. He'll stab you and/or steal your money. People lining up to get into the casino on the twice-a-year 12-hour closures like it's Boxing Day sales opening. It's amazing what people would do for money. Source me, ex-gaming inspector. Story 44. Every casino has its own scent. You're not kidding. In Vegas, Mandalay Bay smells lovely when you step off the tram. Beachy, suntan lotiony, And then if you get back on the tram over to Excalibur, it smells like a wet dog washed in cough syrup. Story 45. In a very literal sense, all the offices and office workers. The lower levels of a casino are typically filled with gambling areas and shops. The outsides of the upper levels are covered in rooms for the views. But what's in the middle of the upper levels, any office workers get those windowless spaces. You might think that casino corporate offices are all snazzy and fun, but they're very typically very dull, normal office spaces. The complete lack of natural light can get quite depressing. In one casino I worked in for a while, the only corporate office with a window was the CEO's office. Every other windowed space was too valuable to spend on an employee, even at the C-suite, unless you had the fortune to work off-site at a dedicated office building. Story 46. If you're on a roll and someone shows up to make a really weird bet that F's up the flow of your winning, it's probably someone on the casino's payroll that's been sent over to F you over, so the casino doesn't have to pay you out. Story 47. I worked in a casino for a couple years in Scotland, and there's a whole database on the customers. What you wear, who you talk to, what your hair looks like. Also, if we didn't know your name and we had to put you in the machine next to us, sometimes we just call you Twat One or Man with Awful Hair. Story 48. There are secret hidden doors that security uses to quickly get in and out to address issues without creating too much of a scene. I was at Foxwoods one time with a few friends just getting burgers at 2 a.m. after working 16 hours straight. It was the only place open at the time. We're sitting there eating, and two groups meet up in front of us and start fighting. It was Jersey Shore type Guidos versus the White Thug rapper bunch. It started out as an unintelligible word battles and turned into pop collars and shoving, then punches and throws. One security guy showed up almost out of thin air. I took a bite of burger, looked up, and now there's 5 security guys. I took another bite, looked up, and everyone is gone. Vanished. The decorative mural behind them was a hidden door. Story 49. Parents lived outside Vegas and had an event at their retirement community with a retired casino security guy from the 1960s. One guy asked him, "What if you catch someone cheating?" And he said, "We politely asked them to leave. And if they came back in again, we took them out back and beat the crap hell out of them." Story 50. A lot of stuff here is very region specific, so take a lot of what you read with a heavy grain of salt. Unethical hold percentages, lack of security through least privilege, etc. aren't happening universally. Something I haven't seen, though, that isn't well known is that depending on where you live, gambling bodies are legally required to respond to FOIA requests that will detail your entire carded gambling history. It's easily initiated and can be an interesting thing to see, or a useful way to have someone with a gambling addiction see the raw numbers. Story 51. The amount of video cameras and the quality of video is insane. I used to work for a big camera manufacturer, and most of the cameras are 4K and have an insane amount of zoom. They can see everything. Story 52. People taking their own life. I was at the Cosmo for 4 days and surprised at the balconies high up in the tower. Lo and behold, we find out the next morning that a young man from Jersey, having gambled all his money and hope away, threw himself off a balcony. The casinos have crews to keep these events as clean and quiet and out of the news as possible. Story 53. Grandmoms leaving kids in the car. Back in 1993, me, my 2 sisters, and my cousin, all around 9 years old, went to the casino with Granny. She lived in Niagara Falls, and we were in town visiting her. All of us grandkids lived out of state. We sat in the car in the winter while she went in to gamble for about an hour. We took the heads off the car seats in her pink Toyota Corolla and fought each other with those. She finally came back and told us not to tell our parents. Of course we did. I thought my dad was going to kill Granny. Story 54. I got my hospitality degree in Nevada, and one of the things they said about casinos has always stuck with me. There's only 2 kinds of people casinos don't trust: their customers and their employees. Also, gambling addicts can register with either the casino or the state to not be allowed in casinos, but they don't really prevent you from coming in the casino. They just prevent you from cashing out if you win. Story 55. Years ago, someone at a local riverboat casino proposed putting childcare into the casinos after somebody found 3 preschool-age siblings playing on the riverbank in the middle of the night. The parents had locked the car with them, asleep in their car seats, and they had awakened, unbuckled the seats and unlocked the car and gotten out. For the employees, that I wouldn't have much of a problem with, but the customers? No, no, 1,000 times no. That's not the casino's responsibility. Story 56. If they cart someone getting CPR off the floor on a gurney, it's probably because they're already dead, and they're moving it before stopping resuscitation efforts, so the medical examiner can come pronounce them dead in a hallway instead of leaving the body lying on the gaming floor. I worked at a casino when that happened, and they didn't realize they couldn't move the body once they stopped trying to revive them. Had to put guards around it for 6 hours to keep people from literally standing over the dead person to play on a specific slot. Story 57. I'm close to and worked at a large casino resort on a reservation with the golf course. You don't hear about the people dying on the property or the circumstances around them. The reservation has their own department of sheriff, so they decide when and if to communicate about them. That mixed with the location in the middle of nowhere and the high-profile clients that went there, some shady crap has definitely gone down. Not as spicy, but they have a high-tech AC airflow system that makes it so cigarette smoke is barely noticeable. As much money as they have, they're still shisty and money-grabbing as crap. It was common for them to appeal valid unemployment claims, which was like pocket change. I had to go to court to have my case heard, but won luckily. Story 58. The individual person tracking systems are very impressive. They use facial recognition software in doorways and threshold frames, even going into the bathrooms. Look for little circles in the door frames or on signs on the walls. Enhanced forensic metadata analytics are capable of finding individual people easily throughout their entire time on site. With a simple scan, they can find everywhere you were in their casino and serve it up on a platter. You're never alone in a casino. Story 59. Casino dealer here. Louisiana dealing a jammed-up dice game had 12 people on just my side of the table, probably another 10 on the other side. We hit the bonus. A man literally cheers and falls out, having a heart attack. Players immediately rush to his empty spot trying to buy in. The pit boss literally yelled at them that if they don't back away from the man on the floor, he was shutting down the entire table. The players wouldn't even let security by to grab the man to attempt to save his life. He died on the floor next to table 115, surrounded by strangers who were hoping to replace him. It's disgusting. That's what they don't tell you. Same table, a different night. A guest proceeded to piss into a cup under at the table so he didn't have to walk off during the busy roll. Beverage came by to grab cups and noticed how warm the beer was, and that's when they knew. Checked cameras and arrested him for public indecency. The people are the worst part of the job. Story 60. My father briefly did business with a company that made slot machines. It turns out that they're even more rigged than you think. Like they're literally hardwired to only ever give back 70% of the money they receive, or something like that. My father decided to never have anything to do with the gambling industry again after he found this out. We all know that slot machines and similar are rigged, but so many people seem to think that they still have a chance to win and so on. If you play a slot machine for any prolonged period of time, you're basically guaranteed to overall lose money. Story 61. Cashier cages get robbed all the time, but this gets swept under the rug as much as possible to avoid scaring away customers. They keep a stack specifically for that purpose to get them out quick. Also, people who win jackpots and take cash get followed out of the casino and robbed all the time. And that's all the stories for today, and a good one to end it on, I think. Anyway, remember, everybody don't gamble what you can't afford to lose. And if it's not fun, stop. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next one.